Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the new and exciting news that we got for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak that's set to release now onto the Nintendo Switch and on PC on June 30th. In this video, we're going to be going over the basic information that Capcom decided to share with us in their digital event heading into Sunbreak's future release, and of course, basically my impressions on the entire presentation at all. And first and foremost, like I just mentioned, the game is set to launch on June 30th, and we now have that by confirmation from Capcom. I do think that's a little bit earlier than expected. I would have been expecting maybe August or something along those lines, but at the end of the day, the sooner the better. We have been waiting for this pretty much set of information and for this game for almost what's going to feel like a year by the time that it launches. So, you know, it's all well and good. The sooner that they want to release it, the better it is. Now, first and foremost, of course, we got to look at a first couple of new monsters with the introduction of what they're actually choosing to call the Three Lords. That will be Malzeno, Luna Garen, and the new creature we got to look at today is called Garen Golem. This is pretty much like a fanged beast creature that has the ability to use both fire and water elemental powers in each one of its hands. Kind of like Gos Harag, but very differently. I guess is more powerful, maybe even slower in that regard. It doesn't seem to have any sort of like weapon makeshift ice type of thing or anything along those lines. It seems to have lava on its right hand, and the left hand has like a water moss effect type of a thing. So it's interesting in that regard, but we've already seen Gos Harag, so in that regard it's kind of like, okay, more of that. It does seem to be like a brute strength type of monster. They also decided to introduce Blood Orange Bishaten, which is the first subspecies officially that we have seen for the new monsters of the game being introduced. And this Blood Orange Bishaten seems to be pretty much a normal Bishaten with now like pine cones that are being set on fire as it tosses them out. It seems to do some type of fire attacks as well. It very much looks completely, utterly different. But the anatomy of the monster pretty much similar to a typical Bishaten. And it is fighting in this new area as well, which we're going to be talking about in a bit. At the end of the video, they do tease Astalos, returning probably extremely fan favorite monster. And one that I didn't necessarily honestly expect to actually make a comeback in any sort of regard for this specific game. And I also didn't necessarily see a lot of people asking or clamoring for it. But Astalos has always been, ever since it was introduced, one of those like really interesting fights, one of those like really interesting wyverns, because I believe in the original reveal, it was fighting like a Rathalos. It kind of like kicked that Rathalos' butt. So it always seemed like it was just, you know, on another tier of difficulty when it comes to fight, and it always just looks cool, especially when it's enraged. That green shifts into like baby blue type of a thing, so it always looks very good. The armor is a fan favorite as well, so you can't disregard that in any way, shape, or form. We also did get a closer look at Luna Garen's now in rage mode, which is now basically standing on his hind legs, and it's fighting like, reminded me of that werewolf character in like Darkstalkers. I forget the name of him. But it does remind me of that for some whatever reason. I guess it's just kind of like the same similarities of just like a wolf man standing up. It looks very much enraged, very upset. So it didn't necessarily show anything along the lines of like a moon shift or anything along those lines. He was very much enraged during the day in the little clip that they showed. So whatever we thought about the moon maybe having something to do with it, it might have something to do with it story-wise, but when it comes to like actual combat or anything along those lines, that does not seem to be the case. They also showed Malzeno's like pretty much fireflies or like butterflies or red glowing, really interesting. They were very much hiding them, is what I want to say. The first few times that was on Malzeno, they were not necessarily showing them at all. They also didn't show Malzeno fighting at all. They did show Luna Garen. They showed the other new monster as well, Garen Golem or whatever, and even that pinecone Bishaten, but we did not see Malzeno fighting. That is something worth pointing out. I still hold that based on the concept arts that we have seen, that he's going to be doing some type of wall climbing, some type of wall fighting in that regard, but we did not get to see that. We just see him do like most likely what will be the introduction like cutscene leading into the battle itself. He kind of like swipes down from the sky into like the hunter, and then he kind of like shouts, and then it presumably transitions into the fight itself, but we don't necessarily get to see more of that. And I guess the new area is now called the Citadel. This is pretty much the area that we have been seeing. There's clearly a night and day cycle. Up until now, all they had shown was the night cycle version of it. Now we have seen the daylight of it, so pretty much how it's going to look in the daytime. And we now know that it's separated into 3 specific parts. Each one of these monsters, Garahom, Lunagaran, and Malzeno, will be zoning one specific area in this entire map. This is why they are being referred to as the 3 lords, essentially, of this like specific area. And you as a hunters, your goal is to pretty much investigate them and basically put a stop to all of their treachery or actions or whatever it might be. So that is pretty much kind of like the story that you are dealing with. You are going to be going into this place, Elgato, pretty much the port that we knew of. And it very much just reminded me at first glance, just looking at it from like the couple of clips that they showed before they even went into like the whole cutscenes or whatever. It very much reminded me of like that place you go into Iceborne and you're just kind of like hanging out there. I forget the name of it. And ultimately it just felt much like that. It wasn't necessarily all that different to me. You have all the basic amenities, you know, you have your quest maiden. They specifically said maiden, so it is worth noting. They also basically hinted that she's some sort of like royalty, a princess or something along those lines. So, you know, not gonna be much of a surprise when the story is like revealed that, you know, she is some type of princess, maiden, whatever type of thing. And you know, you have all the typical stuff. You have even the bunny dango stuff even in there. Like you have a shop that you're going to be eating bunny dangos as well. That's not going to be changing anytime soon. Merchants, you know, armor smiths, smithies, all that kind of stuff, none of that is changing. All that is going to be the same. Not necessarily anything all that surprising. They also spoke about the changes when it comes to the silkbind attacks that they're going to be adding, and they teased a couple of them, but again, it's kind of hard to figure out like ultimately like how much different are they. They could look different, they could look cool, but like I can't sit here and tell you like damage wise based on what we saw, what does that ultimately entail. They showed one like a ring shooting one based off of a light bow gun, I believe that was. They showed another couple of ones like a big slamming attack with a hammer and cool little things like that, but ultimately that was all kind of expected. It was all baked into the pie. Not necessarily a major surprise. There's like a lot of name characters and stuff like that, which is all cool. The presentation went over it rather well. I do at the end of the day feel like this was a whole heck of a lot of hoopla for not a lot of information. Again, we've been waiting for so much details on this game for quite a bit, and I think just for what they really showed, one new monster and one new such species, which was already teased, I think they kind of under-delivered. I don't want to be too critical because this was just the first one. The very beginning of the presentation made it very clear that this is the March digital presentation. So the way that they did this in Rise before, it was based off of months. So presumably this leads me to believe there might be an April digital presentation, a May digital presentation, a June digital presentation. That would just be my expectations based off of their wording. But again, it's just speculation on my part. With that said, however, I think they just didn't really show all that much. It's cool that we now know what the Citadel is. I think it's cool that we have this information on the 3 lords, but ultimately it wasn't a heck of a lot of information that is like, you know, meaningful to people when they're talking about new armor sets, new weapons, new tiers. We know we have master rank, but they didn't even go over into any of that. They didn't mention the rampage, which again, I do have an upcoming video talking about the rampage and where does it ultimately matter in this grand scope of Sunbreak, which I don't really think it matters anymore. They even mentioned like at the beginning of this explanation of the lore aspect of it, they were very much like, hey, the rampage happened in Camera Village, that was cool. Oh, by the way, now we're gonna be in Elgato. So it's just kind of like glossing over the entire thing. It doesn't really matter. I don't know, I just feel like, you know, they're just kind of like ditching entire parts of what made Rise interesting and different, and I guess only because the reception to the rampage wasn't all that interesting. But with that said, of course, they talk about the amiibos, which is okay, cool, we knew about that. There's a digital physical version that you can buy them both games together. The game will be $40 if you buy a standalone. By the way, anyone who's upset about having to pay $40 for Sunbreak, remember that Iceborne was also $40. So, you know, you can't really be upset because this is what they usually do. There will be some sort of digital deluxe version, $50 I presume, with some like layer DLC and stuff like that, hairs, whatever. And they didn't reveal a collector's edition, which I think that was probably honestly the biggest surprise to me specifically. There's no collector's edition. They've always done one. When it comes to Capcom, they love their collector's editions. We're not getting one, it doesn't seem like. Or maybe they'll reveal that at a later point. We don't know. Maybe it's a production situation or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, we don't know about that for now. So I'm just going to presume we're not going to get one. But at the end of the day, June 30th is the day this game is going to release. I'm pretty excited for it. I'm certainly going to buy it on PC and, of course, on Switch as well. I'll be covering it. But, you know, this presentation was a little lackluster. If I'm going to be honest, it certainly felt like it was missing bigger details that, of course, I'm sure they're going to save more information if they are going to do more presentations, as I alluded to earlier. But that's about all the information that I wanted to go over now. That was just pretty much my overall reactions to the presentation. I haven't read up on any other extracurricular material. I will be doing that later, and then we'll be going over that and any other new information that is most likely available somewhere else, but in Japanese and not in English, because this is what typically Capcom does. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.